Are you ready, Sarah? There we go. All right, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call to order the Santa Cruz Libraries Facility Financing Authority meeting here on August 4th, 2022. And could we have a roll call, please?
Director Palacios.
Here.
Director Hoffaker.
Here.
Director Jesberg.
Here.
Chair Legault.
Here, thank you. Are there any additional materials for this agenda this morning?
There are no additional materials.
Okay, thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Anything from staff?
No additions or deletions to the agenda.
Great. Anything from the board? All right, well, we will move into oral communications. This is a section of the agenda where any member of the audience may address the board on a matter either on or off the agenda that's within the board's jurisdiction. However, the board is not able to undertake extended discussion or act on a non-agendized item. Those items can be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on a future agenda. So is there anyone in the audience or in the public today who would like to address the Financing Authority Board this morning?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
All right, thank you. So we'll close public comment and move into our library director report. Director Wilburn.
Thank you, Chair Legault. Just a few updates. I've attached my written report with the updates on our facilities, but a couple of verbal updates. Just a reminder, this Saturday will be the grand reopening of the Scotts Valley Library. We're very excited. That's going to take place from 10 to 2. Lots of activities for the family, so bring your friends and come on out and help us celebrate the grand reopening of the library. Aptos Library is in the process of pouring the foundation today, and so that project is moving along really nicely. With Bransford Library and Live Oak, we've had some construction delays with regard to supply chain. I was at Bransford yesterday. The glass that is arriving is being put in place, and so the project continues to move forward, but we are still awaiting additional materials to be able to finish that project as well as Live Oak. So those two are looking like they're going to come in around the same time in October is what we're anticipating right now, but we'll have further updates as we move forward. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from our board members for Director Wilburn? Are there any public comments? I see, Sarah, we do have someone in the chat asking how to raise their hand.
Yes, for people who are asking how to raise your hand, you should be able to raise your hand.
You might have to hover over your own name and then have that option.
If you want to try again, maybe. That option is on. I'm not clear if it, I'll see if someone can test it.
Director Huffaker, sounds like you have a good way to explain that to someone. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to mention that they need to click on the reactions button on the bottom right of the window, and it'll have a raise hand button that they should be able to click.
I was going to suggest as your counsel that we also provide the telephone number so people can call in using the phone number that's available on the agenda. Perhaps the clerk could provide the telephone number.
Sure. And it looks like the raise hand feature is working. So yes, it looks like we do have a public comment. So Jean Brocklebank, go ahead. Your 3 minutes starts now.
I've unmuted myself. I wasn't going to comment at this moment. I intend to comment later, but I couldn't find how to raise my hand on the menu bar now. I see that there's a separate icon for raising hands. It's usually in the reactions buttons, as somebody had said. So now I know how to do it for a little further into the meeting. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. We always love how Zoom updates things and then you have to refine, or that looks a little bit different. So glad we figured that out before we continue on. So are there any public comments regarding the library director's report? Just
I
officially
see no. I don't see any public comments.
Great. Okay, so then if there's no other comments or questions from our board, we can move on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion in the form listed above. There's no separate discussion on these items prior to the board voting on the action unless a member of the public or a member of the board requests specific discussion. So are there any requests from a board member to pull an item from our consent calendar this morning? Seeing none, is there any public comment on our consent calendar this morning?
It does appear as though there's a public comment. Jean Brocklebank, go ahead. Your 3 minutes starts now.
I see Jean's hand is back up.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. This is regarding the grand jury report. And I had asked,
Yes.
this is a controversial issue, so I had asked that it be removed from the consent agenda, but apparently no one on the board agrees with me. The ballot language clearly meant.
Jean, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That is on the next agenda. That's not on the library facility agenda. So we'll be moving to the library joint powers agenda is when we conclude.
Yes. I'm very sorry again. I should have remembered that this is the LFFA and not the JPA. My apologies. Thank you. I'll return for that. Thank you.
And Chair Legault, there do not appear to be additional comments.
Chair Legault, it looks like we may have lost a little bit of connection. There we go.
Yeah. Well, looks like she's coming back. Or Chair Legault, are you back?
My apologies, my unstable internet this morning.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yes, you are back.
Apologies for my unstable internet this morning. So I think we're ready for a motion on the consent calendar.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move the consent calendar, and I'll also note that Scotts Valley still has 55 cents left in your bond proceeds, so I'm sure you can go to town with that surplus. I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Director Hoffaker,
Yes.
Director Jesberg.
Yeah.
Chair Legault.
Yes. Okay, the next item on our agenda is general business, and it doesn't look like we have any general business this morning. So are there any project updates or comments by our board members? All right, seeing none, our next meeting for the library financing authority will be on November 3rd, and how the COVID-19 situation is working out. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we'll pull up our second agenda. So we're now going to move into the Library Joint Powers Authority meeting on August 4th, 2022. And we'll go ahead and start with a roll call, please.
Director Palacios. Director Palacios.
Trouble. Here.
Director Hoffaker.
Here.
Director Jasberg.
Here.
Chair Legault.
Here, thank you. Are there any additional materials for our agenda today?
There are no additional materials for the agenda today.
All right. I was just checking something on the agenda. Any additions or deletions to our agenda this morning from staff?
No additions or deletions to the agenda.
All right, so let's move into oral communications. This is the opportunity for any member of the audience to address the Joint Powers Authority regarding any item on or off the agenda. And anyone who would like to address the board will have 3 minutes and can go ahead and raise their hand at this time.
Chair Legault, there do not appear to be public comments.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move into our report by library director.
Thank you, Chair Legault. I have submitted my report in writing for the board. I will just mention that I have added to this month's meeting, my report, the California Library Association Legislative Committee information. There's a news from the Capitol item that the Legislative Committee puts out through their lobbyists. And this is just really a great way for me to keep the board and the public informed about state library grants that are coming available and, legislative advocacy that has been done. One of the big things that's included in this news from the Capitol, the recent budget that was passed, does include an additional $5 million for lunch at the library. As you may recall, we did receive about $4,800 to do pop-up lunch at the library programs, and they have been extremely successful and very popular this summer. We want to be able to continue to do more of that. And so now there is additional funding and hopefully it can help us to actually get more interns so that we can provide this type of service in the community next summer and for the years beyond in more locations. So we're really looking forward to that. An additional $50 million is being provided for library infrastructure. Again, as you recall, we have submitted for the $10 million infrastructure grant. We have not heard the final decision. We're still awaiting word on whether we have been awarded that grant. But this is really exciting news because we know that libraries all over the state are in desperate need of infrastructure repairs. And then there's an additional $68 million that is going to be made available, which is really exciting for this new Imagination Library. And Dolly Parton really started this by trying to get books in the hands of families at that early literacy stage. And so libraries will partner with other organizations in the community to ensure that we're reaching the appropriate people who we need to, and we can get those materials, those books sent directly to their homes for them to have in-home libraries. And so we're really excited about being able to make that additional connection in the community with educational and other outreach organizations. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions from our board members to start? Then I'll ask if there's any public comment on the library director's report. You can raise your hand if you have a comment.
Chair Legault, I see neither raised hands nor any comment in the Q&A.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for that report. Great to see more funding coming into the libraries for sure, and being able to expand those important programs. So thank you very much. Next, we'll move to our report by the Friends of the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. I don't see Bruce with us today.
He is, he's coming.
Oh, he's an attendant. Great. Bruce, we'd love to hear your update. Bruce, you might be muted, or there you go.
There you go. Now I've been promoted. I am no longer just an attendant. Good morning, Chair Legault and members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And I'm going to turn on my camera as well. Here we are. Our primary activities at this time are focused on board development and positioning ourselves for a capital campaign next year as part of the Downtown Library and Affordable Housing project. Our committees have been actively working on outreach and advocacy and equity related issues. We continue to work on opposition to the ballot initiative for that project, or against that project, I should say. The board approved a cash donation to a political group that is leading opposition to the ballot initiative. We took this action after extensive research by our staff and leadership to ensure that it was both legal and appropriate. The board voted to approve the action unanimously. And so we went forward. We have completed Form 461, which is a major donor form, and submitted it to a copy to the city. We continue tabling at a variety of locations, most recently the Juneteenth celebration at the London Nelson Park, which was great fun. I was there. We'll continue that activity through the balance of the year. We also provided meals, breakfast and lunch for the staff's quarterly leadership meeting. Happy to do that. I joined Director Wilburn to join us at Scotts Valley this Saturday. The Friends will be there, and the Scotts Valley branch Friends will also be there in attendance and helping with the event. Finally, I am pleased to announce that Janice O'Driscoll has been reelected to another term as president of the Friends of the Library. Janice has been an effective and inspiring leader. Her extensive experience with the library is enormously helpful to us as we do the work that we're doing. Cindy Jackson will serve as our vice president. Lynn Marcus Weiner will be the secretary, and Keith Dutcher will continue his awesome job as our treasurer. We express our appreciation to Martine Gomez, our outgoing vice president, and to Nora Brink, who is our outgoing secretary, for their long work with the Friends. They are leaving the officer corps here, but they are staying as members of the Friends, and we're grateful for that. And that really is the extent of my report, unless anybody has any questions or comments.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Board members, any questions or comments regarding the Friends report? Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on the Friends report?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for all of your hard work, Bruce, and I look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Thank you, Marla. Look forward to seeing you.
Great.
Everyone.
Our next agenda item is the report by the Library Advisory Commission, and I see Lindsay is with us.
Good morning, board members. The Library Advisory Commission last met on Monday, July 18th via Zoom teleconference. Commissioners received an update from Laura Whaley and Assistant Director Howard on the proposed new staffing model. And as I see that item is on the board's agenda today, I just wanted to share that commissioners were encouraged by the outcomes of that proposed staffing model, and that includes improved, consistent, and easy to remember hours across the different system branches, as well as added capacity to allow for greater service continuity when staff are out sick or scheduled for professional development and training. This is a consistent element that we're seeing across the budget and the staffing efforts, to really help support staff in their career development and make sure they have the time and capacity to receive the training that will continue to allow us to provide great services to the community. So there were several public comments on the presentation that also shared positive notes about the proposed staffing model, phase 1. Most questions and interest really centered around the staffing components that will be addressed in phase 2. As such, the library team really seems to be striking the right balance with phase 1 of the new staffing model. And just as the details of phase 2 are worked through, it'll be important for them to maintain a dialogue with the LAC and members of the public. In addition to hearing the staff presentation, the commission did make 2 motions during the meeting agenda. The first motion, which was unanimous with 1 absence, was to approve the consent agenda, which included a review of 3 policies: the freedom to view, freedom to read, and the Library Bill of Rights. The second motion was to review and approve a resolution to reaffirm the Library Advisory Commission's endorsement of the Downtown Library and Affordable Housing Project and oppose the Our Downtown, Our Future ballot measure that's aimed at stopping the project. Just to give a little bit of background, what occurred at the meeting, Vice Chair Dubin, an original member of the Downtown Library Advisory Committee, reviewed at the meeting the work of the DLAC and the recommendation that was brought to the LAC in 2018 on the subject. At that time, the LAC voted unanimously to accept the DLAC recommendation to support the relocation of the library to the mixed-use project. During our July meeting, members of the public wrote and spoke both in favor of and against the resolution. And it's worth sharing, as was done at the meeting, that the duty of the Library Advisory Commission as a voice of the community is to provide advice and feedback regarding issues pertaining to the library. The body is charged with making necessary recommendations as they pertain to the provision of library programs and services. The Downtown Library branch is central to this, and therefore it was appropriate and consistent for the commission to comment on the subject. The commission voted unanimously with 1 absence to approve the resolution reaffirming the LAC's unanimous support for the Downtown Library and Affordable Housing Project and opposing the Our Downtown, Our Future ballot measure aimed at stopping the project. That concludes my report. I'll just echo the excitement that Bruce shared with the Scotts Valley branch reopening this weekend. So hope everybody can make it out for that. Should be great. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do we have any questions from board members? And any public comment wishing to comment on Lindsay's report?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
All right, well, thank you so much, Lindsay. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on Saturday. The next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. So all items listed on the consent calendar will be enacted by 1 motion in the form listed below. There are no separate discussions on these items prior to the time the board votes on the action unless a member of the public or board requests a specific item to be discussed. So this would be a time for members of the public who would like to comment on any item that is on the consent calendar. We look forward to hearing your comments, and you'll have 3 minutes. So
Chair Legault, Jean Brocklebank is up first. Jean, you have 3 minutes and your time starts now.
you're still muted, Jean.
And now?
Yeah, good.
Okay. I am talking about the grand jury, the response to the grand jury report, specifically the response F1. And my response to that response is that the ballot language clearly meant that expand, the word expand, meant an addition to one of the 10 existing branches of the library system. This is why the public was shocked to learn that most of the more than $5 million of Measure S money for Live Oak would be for construction of the annex, not to provide new creative outdoor space or even install rooftop solar on the existing branch. Essentially, the existing branch got budget dust. The Simpkins Swim Center even gets new public art paid for by Measure S funds. Regarding F2 response, the Live Oak Annex was not created for program space. It was created mostly for after-school study space, of which there was more than sufficient possibility at the existing branch. Regarding F3, The text of Measure S repeated work was to be done on 10 branches several times in that language. It did not state anything about an 11th branch. An annex is defined as a building joined to or associated with a main building, providing additional space or accommodations. In reality, the Live Oak Annex is joined to and associated with the Simpkins and Community Center building a mile away from the Live Oak Library building. In my response regarding F5, all services to be provided at the Live Oak Annex can be provided at the existing library branch. There is space for programs in the very large teen room, which is rarely used by teens. Noise need not be a factor because there's a huge outdoor patio area for programs if need be. In response to F6 response, interesting that the response about operating budget mentions, quote, a small free library of materials, end quote, because the annex will have no books. I guess I don't know what materials means. R1 response, no matter how the response is played, construction of a library building a mile away from an existing branch, essentially creating an 11th branch, was not presented, never presented to the voters in the ballot language. R2, expanding access cannot possibly be construed to mean new construction a mile away from an existing library branch. This ends my comments. I thank you for listening. As you know, I am on record. Well, at least 2 of the board members know, the others don't know because they weren't involved in the JPA. I've been saying this over and over and over.
And Jean, your 3 minutes is up. Thank you so much
you.
for your comment.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jean. Is there any other member of the audience who'd like to comment on anything on the consent calendar? And I believe we did receive 2 written comments that were included in the packet as well.
And Chair Legault, I see no further public comment.
Okay. Okay, well, then I would entertain a motion from the board regarding the consent calendar.
I would move approval, Chair.
Well, I'll second.
All right, moved by Huffaker, second by Palacios, and could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Director Hoffaker,
Yes.
Director Jasberg,
Yes.
Chair Legault.
Yes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is our general business, and item A is classification changes. So back to Director Wilburn.
Thank you, Chair Legault, members of the board. We are bringing this item to you today requesting that you approve the classification changes and the expenditure to the fiscal year 23 library operating budget. This is a request to remove a library specialist volunteer coordinator position in favor of adding a community relations specialist and removing a library information specialist in favor of a librarian position. A little bit of background about this in doing listening sessions with our staff who have just been phenomenal and listening to the public. One, we recognize that our person who has really been focused on doing marketing. We have a couple of staff members who also do other things, but marketing has not been their primary focus. And so by adding this community relations specialist, our goal is to get better marketing and more materials and information out to our public. I've heard from some members of our public asking us to update more information on our website, and having somebody who is dedicated to that will help us to be able to improve that operation. And so that really is the crux of that position. And then for the library information specialists, we do have some phenomenal library information specialists who have done some great work. They're very specialized in the fields that they are in. But overall, when we go out to recruit, we've had this recent vacancy. We want to ensure that we are providing the highest level of collection development team members as we can. And so we believe that that would entail making this a librarian position, as librarians with master's degrees do actually focus very specifically on collection development and ensuring that the community needs are met through our collections of print and digital materials. And so again, our request is that you remove the library specialist, volunteer coordinator position, and the library information specialist in favor of the community relations specialist to give us a more robust marketing program. And the librarian too would be replacing that information specialist for collection management. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from our board members regarding these staffing changes? I'll just say I appreciate your focus on public outreach. I think it's something that we are all trying to do more of and recognize that it is a specialized field and it takes someone who has some specific training in that area to really do it well and to reach the community. So appreciate that. Let's see if there's any public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the staffing changes?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
All right, thank you. So let's see, I should jump back to the staff report. Are we looking for a motion to approve these changes? We probably are, right? Yes.
I'll move the motion to approve the classification changes and expenditure for the changes to the library budget.
I second that, and I also second Chair Legault's comments around the emphasis and prioritizing public outreach and the important role of that communication position. So thank you for that.
Great. Motion by Palacios and seconded by Huffaker. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Director Hoffaker,
Yes.
Director Jasbrook, Director Jasbrook,
Hello, can you hear me yet?
thank you, yes. Chair Legault,
Yes. Thank you. Item B on our general business agenda is the presentation and staffing proposal.
Thank you, Chair Legault. Assistant Director Howard will kick us off with a presentation on our proposed staffing model.
Thank you, Director Yolande, and good morning, Chair Legault and board members. You may remember we came to the board a couple of times over the past couple of years where we are trying to answer the question simply, how many staff members do we need in each of these branches for X number of hours? It seems like a straightforward question, but it really can be answered a number of different ways. And we believe that the proposal we're bringing to you today really optimizes public service with the numbers that we are proposing. And I just want to take a step back because not everyone is aware that when you walk into a library, the individuals who are helping you out with getting a new library card, helping you with your account to tell you how many books you have, and then helping you with all the other public service needs that you have, are typically what we call in our organization, library assistant twos. They're really the backbone in many ways to that public service that we offer. And so you heard the commissioner speak earlier about phase 1 and phase 2. So this is really phase 1, where we're looking at that backbone and the public service, what we need to keep the lights on in the library and have the public safely in those spaces. Phase 2 will look at the librarians. And in most of the country, typically librarians have a master's degree, and they're the ones who really look and examine the services that we provide. They try to figure out the outcomes that we're having in the community. They run the services, the programs, and as the director Yolande said, they're also the ones who help identify what we need in our collection. So those, in a nutshell, are the different job responsibilities that we have. And so phase 1 we're looking at how we're going to continue to run public service and optimize that. And then one other thing that I want to add is the reason why this has been somewhat of a challenge is because things have changed or changed dramatically during the Great Recession, and they've never really been put back together since then. So since that period, the library here has relied heavily on temp staff in order to keep the lights on, in order to have the safe number of people operating our buildings so that we're within the MOU and that we can safely operate. That creates a number of challenges. And one of those challenges is oftentimes staff are wearing many different hats. So as I just described, in the ideal world where librarians are focusing on the programs and the services, trying to figure out how to evaluate them and trying to figure out what items we need to have in our collection, they're often running around doing multiple jobs that are really outside of that level of responsibility. And then we also have the library assistant twos running around trying to figure out how to fill these gaps. And then on top of that, since we rely heavily on temp staff as our substitutes, we're running around trying to figure out how to assign them, also how to get them trained within our typical training model that we have for regular benefited staff. So I know that's a mouthful, but I think we are really getting there in terms of how we can optimize this. And it's been helped with the looking at the temp budget that we have, which has been pretty significant. And then also combining that with the newly renegotiated MOU or MOE. So this was the original goal that we had when we set off on this path, which was striving for fair and equitable services while remaining responsive to the unique needs of each community within Santa Cruz County. And then you can go to the next slide. So here, just very clearly are the goals that we've set. We're trying to provide adequate staffing levels to create smoother and less stressful operations. We are trying to recruit, train, and retain benefited permanent staff. Reduce job fatigue created through staff having to hold multiple positions, as I was mentioning earlier, and then ensure excellent customer service. Having the benefited staff rather than relying on so many substitutes gives us greater consistency. And that's going to help support, and for a number of reasons, providing better customer service. Meet strategic goals to have librarians dedicated to meeting program outreach and service needs. As I was saying, we've been wearing many different hats trying to keep the lights on at the library. And the goal here is to have a more uniform service and then have the paraprofessionals dedicated to helping us keep that public service going while the librarians are doing their work that they're supposed to be doing. Okay, go on to the next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, since the Great Recession, the library has relied heavily on temporary staff to open libraries. Minimum staffing reduces levels of service, programming, and outreach to the community. The lower staff levels result in reduced training and professional development capacity. Frequently, temporary staff work with less training than benefited staff. Library admin invests significant time and effort to recruit and assign temporary staff. So we have a lot of responsibilities for our admin staff, but they've also have to play full-time coordinator to get the substitutes to the different branches when we need to fill these gaps. And so this will help alleviate that time and that strain on them as well. So this whole model that we've been working on since the Great Recession has put a strain on every division within the library. Professional staff are pulled away from librarian duties when needed for customer service coverage. Again, wearing multiple hats. Okay, if you could please go on to the next. Okay, so here are the opportunities that we have now. So there has been for some time a large temp budget. And then this increase in the MOE allows us to convert that budget into benefited positions. And then it also sets us up for what we're going to be calling phase 2, which is when we will do an analysis on the needs that we have for the librarians. And so we'll be coming back to you with that proposal later on in the year. Refocusing LA2s, which are the library assistant 2s, role to nearly exclusively support public service can permit librarians to refocus their attention on other services and programs. Additional staff increase professional development and training opportunities. Okay, on to the next, please. So this just sort of gives the breakdown that I was highlighting earlier, so that when you walk into the library, more often than not, you're interacting with a library assistant too. They are the ones who are going to help you get your library card, help you with the printer, help you just locate the different areas of the library. So this gives you the breakdown. And then they have supervisors who are the library assistant 3s. And then we have a couple librarian or library assistant 4s who help either with the much larger services that we provide or help focus on system-wide duties. And then we have the librarians. We have librarian 1, librarian 2. And as I said, they are helping us to evaluate the programming that we provide, the various services, and then also identify the needs within our collection. Okay, please go on to the next slide. And as Chair Lindsay was saying, we are able to now provide more consistent hours across the board. So it will not be so hard to remember when the library is open. And this gives you the breakdown for the various branches. Okay, if you could please go on to the next slide. Again, this allows us to really maximize that customer service. We believe this will provide a sufficient number of staff, and it'll also provide us with the opportunity to continually train the staff. We haven't yet presented to you the new strategic plan, but a large focus, there are 2 really significant focuses in there, and one is on training, and the other is on evaluation, really kind of measuring our success. And we believe this positions us to do that in a much more successful way. Okay, if you could please go on to the next slide. Here are the increases broken down by branch in order to meet these needs. Again, the L8, and this is just phase 1. So we're really just looking at that backbone of customer service, which focuses on the library assistants and the increases that we're seeking. Okay, go on to the next slide, please. So the total FTE that we're adding in phase 1 is 8.5, and that's across 10 libraries. Okay, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions from board members regarding these proposed staffing changes?
I have a number of questions. First question is a pretty simple one. Just what is the cost of the differential between a temporary position and a permanent position? I imagine it's just the benefit cost, but I wanted to know what that delta is.
Sure. Within your packet, we've included some of that chart information in item 9B. We anticipate that we will have $373,739 remaining. We still do pay our aides out of that temp budget. So we are not completely eliminating the existing temp budget, which was about $825,000. So we're going to use a portion of that because we still have aides that come out of that budget. And our aides are the staff members who come and shelve materials at our branches. They may assist with setup, those types of things around the library. And so a portion of that temp budget is still going to be held for that, that purpose. In addition, we are saving a piece of that temp budget because we recognize that things happen and people may need to be off for an extended period of leave time for a medical reason, perhaps, or something else. And so we still are maintaining a piece of that temporary budget in case we do need to bring someone back in. But what we're using is about $374,000, almost $373,739. That's going to help offset the cost, which is $817,869, and that includes salary and benefits for the 8.5 FTE. And so when in that last chart on page 75 of your packet, we've kind of outlined in the chart there that we're anticipating with the revenue we added in item 8I, that 1.370. That we are then going to, we have those janitorial costs that we have incurred with the increase in the contract and in adding the midday cleanings. And then we have an 8% automatically whenever there is an increase in our revenue, we increase our collection budget to ensure that we're balancing our collections. And then that is 109,000. And then the item 9A, which we approved for the classification changes, was at an additional expense of 85,694. And then coming down to, you can see in this chart, the 373,739 is that savings that we're still capturing from that, temporary budget, where we're not going to have that big temp budget just sitting out there. We're going to use a portion of that to offset the costs of these proposed 8.5 FTE. And then, you know, with balancing that all out, it's going to result in about 659,000 that will still be maintained in our general fund, our library general fund budget that will be left over. And so we know that we've got some other projects that we may want to do moving forward, but at this time we actually are have additional revenue at the end of the year based on this of about 659,000.
Okay, I do have questions about the overall impact, but my question, it didn't answer my question. My question was just on a temporary position versus a benefited position. What is the delta? So one FTE temporary position, one FTE permanent position. What is the cost differential?
I would have to get that information for you because the temps do not get benefits. And
Right.
so I would have to separate that out.
Yeah.
I'm happy to get you that
I
information.
mean, typically, you know, we used to say it was 30%, typically the benefited factor, but lately with the cost of PERS and health benefits, it's, I know with some county positions, depending, public safety, we're all the way up to almost 70%. Other positions, we have many that are up to 50%. So, you know, that's just a big, you know, consideration. Because I know that, of course, you know, we all would like to have only permanent positions, but there's a budgetary impact. And so anyway, if you could get me that information about just the delta, the benefit cost. And then the other question I had to do with the use of fund balance. I know when we approved the budget, we were using a fair amount of fund balance to balance the budget. And then now we have this MOE, new revenues, and we also have the sales tax increase as well. And so I'm wondering, are we still planning to use the same amount of fund balance, or are we reducing the reliance on fund balance and going to use more of the new revenue that we're bringing in?
We certainly, with that 659,000, it would reduce that fund balance that we would be using if we're using this. Yes.
So it would be good to have the actual figures. So maybe if you could get us that information, if you could revise the budget, the overall budget summary and present that to us, because I know in the overall budget summary, we had that use of fund balance of, I forget how much it was, but it was a fair amount. And now we're bringing in new revenue. And so in theory, we're going to use, we're also increasing our expenditures, but I'm also assuming, I know that there's some amount of money that's left over between our increased costs and our new revenue. So I'm assuming we're going to use less fund balance. And it would be good to be able to see that summary chart, because I do think that maintaining our fund balance to the greatest extent possible going into a recession year, which we know that you know, the revenues are going to start going down instead of up, more than likely in the next couple of years. So if you could get us that information, I didn't see it in the packet, the overall summary of how we're using the change and how we're going to use fund balance based on all these changes.
I'd be happy to get that information to you.
those are that's all the questions I had.
Okay, thank you, Director Palacios. Are there other questions from other board members?
Carlos asked mine regarding the fund balance. It's all something I'm continuing to try to get my arms around as we move through it. So as much detail as we can provide as we're making adjustments would be helpful. And then just doing the quick math on the table that you guys provided, looks like the net increase in personnel costs would be around $444,000. Is that right? From shifting from temps to permanent? Do I have that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, those are all the questions I have. Thanks.
Okay, I agree. I think, anytime we make changes to permanent FTEs, which is a permanent long-term commitment, we have less flexibility than we do when we're looking at temp staffing and temp budgets. And so understanding not just the current year budget impact, but the long-term budget impact of those increased staffing is definitely something that this board and library leadership, should be looking at and considering. And to Director Palacios' point, the economy right now is very difficult to predict, but there are certainly those recession predictions on the horizon, and it's always challenging to balance that with recognizing, the needs and the challenges of trying to run day-to-day operations with less reliable staff and less trained staff who are going to not be able to provide as good a public service because they aren't full-time permanent employees. So thank you for that presentation. Let's turn it over to public comment and see if there's any members of the audience who would like to comment on this item.
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
All right, thank you. So we'll bring it back to the board, and would like to hear from our board if we're ready to make a motion on this item, or if we would like to direct staff to return with that additional information before we take action.
I would like to go ahead and move to approve the addition of the staffing as recommended by staff, and then add direction that staff return at our next next meeting with a revised budget, so that we have the overall impact, and we can decide with regard to how this new revenue is going to be used. Either we're going to use it for new expenditures or to reduce our fund balance, reliance on fund balance. So that would be my motion.
I would be willing to second that. And I also just want to thank the staff's thoughtfulness around the operational efficiencies that these additional positions will provide across the branches. I understand the cumbersomeness of having to manage the number of temp staff that we have that supplement, augment our permanent staffing. And I also appreciate Director Palacios' comments around really trying to get a firm handle on the use of our fund balance and future use of our fund balance as we move forward. So thank you.
All right, we have a motion by Director Palacios and a second by Huffaker. Any other discussion? I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Director Huffaker,
Yes.
Director Jasberg,
Yeah.
Chair Legault.
Yes. All right, thank you. Exciting to see how with the libraries reopening and staffing positions get refilled, how all of this will evolve over the next 1 to 2 years as well. So that concludes the general business portion of our agenda. The next item would be comments by board members. Any board members who have any comments for us today? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to scheduled upcoming meetings. Our next scheduled meeting is November 3rd at 9 a.m. and to be determined whether that will be virtual or in person or some sort of hybrid, but we will make sure that information is published timely with the agenda so that anyone who wants to attend will be able to do so. And with that, we are going to adjourn to closed session. So the Joint Powers Authority Board will be conducting a closed session regarding public employee performance evaluation. And we are at the 6-month point with our library director. And so we'll be conducting a performance evaluation with our library director in closed session. So with that, we will adjourn to our next regular meeting on November 3rd.